Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode, Charmed. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, we have, Maggie and Jordan in New Orleans, which is really interesting. I'm like, okay, what are they doing in New Orleans? And they're in a place called Mess. It's Magical Experience Survivor Support. I'm like, wait, there's a support group from people who've been, I guess, like almost victims of like some supernatural stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. And Jordan Sam was like, I was like, oh, is this something legit? Like, oh, like, did Maggie find something for her? But then the way he's talking and stuff like that, I'm like, you're investigating stuff. It's like, right, they're looking into the symbol that they found out about last episode. So it's like they're looking into that. So that's what this whole situation's about. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. And they're trying to draw out certain people, which they do. In particular, they draw out this dude named Bruce, who doesn't really tell what his group is all about. Saying that they just don't have a name, but call themselves true believers. I guess it's supposed to be maybe one thing of like, well, because he talks about the fact is because I guess there's some of these, it's kind of like, people who talk about being abducted by aliens. It's kind of like that where there's the fake people and then there's the real people who've had experiences with magic. I think that's what, he was kind of basically talking about. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like just that aspect being a thing that exists in this world is kind of interesting. But regardless. So now it's a situation of like, all right, so Maggie and Jordan kind of have one foot into the door, kind of investigating this place. They're like having a meeting and whatnot. So it's like, oh, come through. So that's interesting. And the fact of the matter is, I like, because obviously for Maggie, she's very protective, being like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to put your life in danger. And he's like, well, I kind of have to, because the fact of the matter is, as I was told, I have to, balance the scales of justice. And he figured this is like the best way to do it. And I love that he's kind of, calling Maggie his partner in crime and stuff like that, which I'm like, there's part of my brain that's like, your girlfriend's not going to be too happy about you just like, I mean, granted, you're like, you use magic to get there. It's not like you have to like, it's not like you can't just pop in and pop back, to Seattle at any point in time, but it's just still kind of like I'm sure that's going to complicate things. Like him and Maggie are making it sure to stay friends, mainly from Maggie's point, because it's like, well, recently the whole Parker situation, I'm sure that complicates things, but also like, it's also just the thing is she's seen with her sisters, and once again, just even the Parker situation in herself, that this life, of being a charmed one, the supernatural world doesn't do well with relationships, in particular with humans. Obviously, once again, Gavin and Nico being great examples of that. People get hurt and affected in that situation. So, but I just thought I just know that that's going to turn into a complicated thing, especially how things kind of end up. We'll get to that soon enough. So. Now, what was interesting, though, is they go to this club and everything, and I thought it was weird. I was like, you're meeting at legitimately a club or whatever. I'm like, it wasn't what I was expecting. But they end up meeting with Nadia, and they're trying to sell the chakram, but that's just, a means to kind of get through the door. But obviously this group is very tight-lipped because Nadia doesn't say anything about what they're up to or what. Basically, it's like, don't you, like, who's a part of this group or whatever? It's kind of like everyone, which kind of makes me think of kind of like, there's a hacker collective called Everyone in the TV show Elementary. If you're unaware, that's the CBS Sherlock Holmes show. But I wonder, is that what she was kind of insinuating, where it's like, oh, we're a group of just anybody. Like, anybody could be this group. Like, is it like a worldwide organization type of secret society type of situation? And it's like, oh, we are anyone and everyone type of situation. It seemed like that might have been, or is it more so like we're doing this for it? Like, anyone can join because this is for everyone. Once again, never telling us really what the group was about. But it's like, oh, here's some gummies. Take it. And obviously Maggie was like, no, I'm vegan, I'm not going to do that. But Jordan does. It was interesting. I didn't even correlate. I was like, oh, that probably wasn't a good idea. But then what was interesting is like Maggie immediately being like, oh, it looks like the Dark Liar's poison. I was like, it didn't even cross my mind to even think that. I was like, now that's interesting. But then everyone in the club, including Jordan, because he ate the candy, are kind of in this trance. And this shaman pops up. I'm like, all right, this is weird. And he starts performing something, and you see it kind of affecting him. I was like, oh, and he drips like a little black amber into like this dead guy's mouth, and I'm like, as I right as we can see, the black amber can be used as a resurrection. I guess it depends on how soon after death, because remember the rabbit was, or the rat or whatever, was able to come back to life pretty quickly. But I think, like I said, it depends on how long the person's been dead. Once again, we don't know the full scope of what the black amber is capable of, but it seems like it needs a little bit of a jump start because the shaman was basically absorbing life force from everyone in the room, which is really interesting. I thought that was really fascinating. I'm wondering, like I said, I'm wondering why that specifically was necessary. And the fact is, it seems like whoever, like Nadia and them, are a part of this group. It doesn't seem like they necessarily, or they know about magic, but maybe they're not experienced in the magic world. Because my thought process was maybe, in the original Charm, there was this woman who was kind of Wiccan-ish. I think she was played by Danielle Harris, if I'm remembering correctly. But it was basically, she found out about the Charmed Ones and she was so obsessed with becoming one of them. Like, what if this is a group of people who like have no magical talent and they're aware of what that the supernatural world exists and they're trying to use it for their own means of, for whatever reason. I mean, they're resurrecting someone, but I'm wondering, is it supposed to be a thing of like they're trying to buy and sell, like they're trying to like corporatize magic or something like that. It's weird to say. You get what I'm trying to say? That they're trying to like turn magic into a business that humans can kind of apply and do their own thing. That's what I'm wondering. I have no idea. Like, I might be, reaching. We'll kind of, have to wait and see. But I thought it was pretty badass that Maggie went up there, had her baton ready, and kicked that shaman's ass. I was like, yo! And then the grand scheme of things, I'm like, right, I'm forgetting, like, Maggie, let's not forget, like, she had a staff last season. I guess well, I'm about going to tangent, but it's not worth it. But I guess that baton is supposed to be like her new staff. Granted, it's not like enchanted like her staff was last season, but still, she's pretty badass. I was like, yo, and she was able to break the spell and kind of save everyone's lives. But I still kind of feel like that probably might have shaved some days, maybe some months, some years off some people's lives potentially, which is kind of sucky considering the fact is that Jordan already has that curse on him. That's kind of a little disheartening. Which even he had said, like, the reason for this was because, like, any future boys in his family will continue this curse if he doesn't break it. So it's not just for breaking it for him, it's breaking it for a future generation, any future generations in his bloodline, whatever that may be. More, obviously, it's more specifically for the boys, but still. So that was interesting. Like I said, because at the end of that situation, we see Nadia being like, well, yeah, we got pictures of all of them, so we know not to kind of cross paths with them again. But it's like, yeah, it kind of worked, and now it's time to move on to the next phase. Now, what that looks like, is he someone important? Like, did someone pay for, like, this particular person to get resurrected? I mean, it's like going through that much to resurrect a specific person. I wonder, like, how did he die? Who is he? Like, questions like that is what I'm so curious about. So that's one fascinating aspect of the episode. The other is, Mel and Harry. The fact of the matter is they went trying to stop a demon who was hunting, a malignant demon that was hunting witches, which is interesting because that brings up a whole conversation of, well, obviously, despite being the overlord, obviously Abigail doesn't have full reign of all demons. Most demons are going to be in line, but obviously there's going to be outliers. And even Harry recognizes that. It's like, well, we had the benefit of being in a relationship with her. It's like 99% are kind of under her control. Can't really help the stragglers that are going to kind of go outside of her reach and stuff like that. So, but sadly, the run-in with the demon didn't go well in the sense that it wouldn't stop him, but Harry got hurt in the process, and it looks like he's getting sick. And he wants Mel to call Abigail rather than Macy, which that's a whole conversation in itself. It's like, well, is it because, well, he knows where she is, that she's with Julian, and he doesn't want to be in that awkward position where he's taken away from her. It's like he wants her to be happy, but also at the same time, it's like, well, who knows more about demons than Abigail, so she'd be able to help. So it probably wasn't even him really thinking that much, but, it's like not even wanting Macy to be there, not even to worry about her, but I think it's just because it's like, well, they're kind of in an awkward situation, but like I said, I think he just didn't want to be the one to kind of interfere, and like he knows that she's probably having a good time, and he doesn't want to, I think Harry was kind of thinking like that. Maybe not. Well, we'd have to ultimately kind of wait and see, in the grand scheme of things. But obviously Abigail thinks it is a demon infection. At the same time, Macy and Julian are spending time together. We learn about Julian's family. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And the fact is, we're getting to know so much about his background like that, in particular his parents dying. I'm like, That's gonna be a big plot point now. What particular case? Which part of my brain goes, you don't think? Well, he doesn't have the tattoo, but that storyline could circle back around. Like Nadia and her group could be something connected. Well, because the whole conversation is about changing the world. What does Julian keep saying? What does his aunt keep saying about him changing the world? Nadia's group is trying to change the world. So I think both worlds are going to collide. It might be a situation that his aunt Vivian is a part of it and maybe he isn't, or maybe eventually he gets approached by Nadia's group and that turns into a whole thing. Once again, we'll have to wait and see. It then starts begging the question, you don't think he's it starts turning into that thing of like, oh, I hope it doesn't turn into that kind of gnarly Cole situation. Well, a more apt description would be like the whole Parker situation, obviously, in this version, which is a reflection of the Cole situation. Like, oh, you're spying on them, you're getting close to them so you can keep an eye on them and learn how to strike. So I hope the whole Julian thing doesn't turn into that. It could eventually turn around. Like I said, I'm getting way ahead of myself in that regard, but they were bonding, and obviously, they bet a good time. And then then Macy meets his Aunt Vivian, who is, very protective because like that's the only family he has left. And I was like, it seemed like everything was good. In fact, she's working on a DNA sequencer that can basically work within an hour. So it's like, that's cool. And then it turns out that becomes very relevant in the episode because Macy finds out about Harry, goes back to Seattle as fast as she can. And then, obviously Abigail wants to give him this specific concoction that will help with this particular infection. But if he's not infected with this specific thing, this cure will kill him. Obviously, Macy's like, no, we can't take that chance. So she's like, give me an opportunity to check his DNA, check all these other boxes first before we go down that route. And even Mel was kind of like, yeah, because both of them they don't really trust Abigail to the extent that Harry does. So it turns into a thing of like, okay, so we got to figure out like what's in his system and stuff like that. And it leads to some interesting conversations because even in his state of just kind of being kind of in and out, Harry's like, where is she? And Abigail's like, who? And he's like, Macy. And it's like, ooh, that's got to sting. Even in his state, he's still, because like the fact of the matter is, it's a complicated thing of like, despite everything, yes, there's a little bit of affection that he does kind of like and care about Abigail, but I think but the thing is, he's in love with Macy. And the fact of the matter is, I think it's the whole combination of like, well, she's into my dark lighter, so I think he gets a little self-conscious about that. Like, she doesn't kind of feel that way about me, and especially after last episode, it kind of makes him lean to more towards Abigail because she accepts him as him, but because it's like, it seems like Macy's only interested in my darker self, whereas Abigail likes me, but it's still that thing of like, despite that, you can't help who you love, but it's one complicated love triangle situation. But Mel had brought it up, like, you really do care, and say, you just noticed, you just figured that out on your own. And I love Mel kind of snapping back by being like, Harry would never love someone as wicked as you. Like, yeah, but then she's kind of insinuating that her and Harry did something, and then Mel is like, you and Harry? And she's like, what? Because she was saying that he was a very, like, sexual lover, like, despite like, his appearances and stuff like that, he knows how to please a woman. Like, whoa, we're having this conversation. That's... But it's, it's like, is that true? Which I don't think it is, because that's just, Harry's old school like that. I mean, literally old school. But the fact of the matter is, I think she was saying that more so than anything, just to kind of, because I think maybe there's part of her that wants it to be true, but also is also just to get under Mel's skin, just because I'm curious, because obviously the ones she has the biggest issues with are Macy and Mel. Not really sure I think Maggie's not necessarily the biggest fan of her, too, especially, with the whole brother situation, the whole Parker thing, but it's a whole thing. So, truth be told, is none of the sisters are the biggest fans of her anyway, and she's not the biggest fans of them. The only person she cares about in the group is Harry, so. But obviously, they got the DNA sequencer because Macy's whole interaction with Vivian was interesting. And she's like, you're trying to get close to Julian. It's her being that protective on of being like, the fact is you're just trying to get close to him because of his, it's some corporate spy type of situation with Macy. Like, it's not like that. And it's like, so if, why don't you get this friend to a hospital or something, we'll cover expenses. It's like, it doesn't work like that. So that seems even more suspicious. So she's not willing to help. But it's like, all right, you break up with Julian and I'll make it happen, which Macy makes that sacrifice because despite how she's feeling about Julian and everything, Harry's life is on the line, so of course she's going to do it. But it's also because much like the situation between Harry and Abigail, your feelings towards Harry are because they're so stubborn about just acting upon it, because it's like we both know how we feel about each other, but we're just questioning it, and we're just kind of not going for it, sadly, and that's the most frustrating thing. It's like, shut up and get together already, But side note, I meant to bring this up. Did not realize this until last episode when I looked it up. But the actress who plays Macy, Madeline Mantic, is British. Had no idea, because I've always heard her, with an American accent, so I never knew that until I was like, oh my god, it's so crazy. Nevertheless, like I said, that was a tangent, but I just had, because I totally found that out last episode, so I just felt like including that. But regardless, tangents and all that. With the DNA sequencers, they were able to, check, were able to start running tests to see, okay, what's up. But obviously, Mel and Macy had to go check on Maggie with the whole Jordan situation. And which I didn't talk about it. That was a pretty badass thing of like how they helped him, like Macy using her fire on one side of Maggie's baton, and then Mel kind of like freezing kind of the other side to kind of create like an electric charge to kind of like jumpstart him. And I'm like, that's a pretty badass way to go about doing that. That's pretty legit. But while that was happening, Abigail kind of goes, oh, I thought they'd never leave. I was like, oh, so I was like, has this all been your plan? Because I just think it's a little convenient, once again, and that's Macy's thought too, because it's like, oh, another antidote, huh? Because it's like, oh, you just conveniently know how to make the antidote for the situation. It was interesting because like because she knows stuff about like demon stuff like that, because like she has a book from her mom, Francesca. It's like, right, Mel's like, you're a witch too, and she's like, yeah, and she lost her mom as well. Well, I guess, more so like, well, we don't know the full scale of the story and stuff like that, which I'm like, huh. I guess trying to imply, like, obviously she has a lot. The sad and complicated thing is she has a lot in common with the Charmlands, and obviously has a lot in common with Macy. The whole half witch, half demon situation, but also just both being in love with Harry. And because despite everything, Abigail might seem a little manipulative and stuff like that, but it is because she does love Harry. And I think it's because of like the complicated upbringing, not being accepted by the witches, not being accepted by the demons. She's always kind of fought for what she wants, so she'll kind of go about it any means to get what she wants, and what she wants is Harry, because I don't think she's ever really, we don't know what her love life has been like, but I think for her, it's like the opportunity to have someone look at her that way, the way Harry looks at her, like no one else looks at her that way. So it's like, you want to hold on to that. You don't want to let that go, because you never, it's probably like a once in a lifetime, like, oh, there's sparks here. Why not take a chance type of situation, But obviously when they come back, Abigail's already giving him the antidote, which turns out it does work. I shouldn't be too surprised because I skipped over it, but obviously Harry did have yellow eyes and he did attack Mel out of nowhere, so it did seem heavily like, oh, this might be some demon infection. Which I wonder, would it work like that on anyone else? I'd assume so, or is it just because Harry's a white lighter that worked on him like that? It's probably would have just worked on anyone, but that's, once again, it's that thing of like, because of Abigail, like just the way she operates, you kind of can't help but be suspicious of it, but yeah, it's like in the end, it all worked out. And obviously Harry's like, I don't know how to thank you. She's like, yeah, you do. It's just kind of like, accept how I feel about you. Let us be, like, give this a try. But obviously Harry he can't bring himself to do that. But then sadly, at this flip side of this whole situation is the whole situation with Macy and Julian. And he talking about the breakup and everything. And he kind of figures, it's like, wait, my aunt kind of put you to this, and it's like, well, she doesn't like me. And it's like, well, the fact of the matter is, I'll kind of deal with my aunt if you can put up with me, because he's willing to give this a shot, because obviously Julian really likes Macy. Once again, caveat being, hopefully he's not manipulating, because that would suck. And then they kiss, and much like Macy saw Harry and Abigail kiss, he's seeing that, and it's kind of breaking. It's like, come on, you two, stop futzing around and just get together, you know? Like, it's, you know, because literally everyone else can see it. You know, everyone else knows, but it's so interesting because that whole thing is complicated. But to be fair, the Maggie and Jordan thing is complicated too. Because for him, I like that because, you know, he's calling Maggie Sergeant and everything. It's like, oh, you saved my life. Again, the fact of the matter is a good soldier knows when to follow orders. But I like Maggie being like, but a great soldier knows when to take one for the team. Because it's like, well, it got them closer to the group and now they kind of know what they were up to. Granted, obviously, things didn't work out, so they don't have the full scope of everything, but they're a step closer in the right direction. But, you know, Jordan's never met anyone like Maggie and everything, so there's like this budding, you know, thing there, like, you know, this partnership. Now, whether it stays friendly, because I even halfway expected him to kind of lean in and kiss, but it's like, no, it didn't happen. Once again, he's in a relationship and she recognizes that. So once again, also relationships don't necessarily work in this world. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where that goes. Like I said, you know, that's heading in one direction while that love triangle is heading in another direction. It seems like the only, and it's almost heartbreaking because it's like, well, Mel's the one that kind of put her love life on hold the most. I mean, granted, that was the whole cat situation. I don't know if that's ever going to circle back around. I mean, she had to kind of step away for a while. We'll kind of have to wait and see whether or not anything comes of that. You know, I mean, because, you know, just thinking about it in the grand scheme of things, in the original Charmed series, it worked out love life wise for everyone. Granted, it was kind of a very bumpy road there for everyone across the board, whether that be Piper, Phoebe, or Paige, but it all worked out in the end. So you're very hopeful that it kind of works out for all of them, that they're able to kind of find that balance. But we'll have to ultimately wait and see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about today. Niggas, I'm with me. Be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.